I was getting dressed to have dinner at my daughter's house when my lawyer texted, "Call me now!" I called right away, and what he said about her left me frozen. "David, don't go to that dinner." Sam's voice was tight. "I just finished reviewing the accounts you asked me to check. Your daughter has been stealing from you, systematically, for 3 years. My hand gripped the phone harder. How much? $240,000, maybe more. I sat down on the bed, my half-buttoned shirt suddenly feeling too tight. The room tilted slightly, then righted itself. Jessica, my daughter, the one who'd insisted on helping me after Eleanor died, who'd taken over my finances when I was too grief-stricken to think straight. Are you certain? I have the bank statements right here. Transfers to accounts in her name, Tom's name, their business accounts. She's been using the power of attorney you signed. David, she's drained your retirement fund to almost nothing. I looked at my reflection in the dresser mirror, 58 years old, gray at the temples, lines around my eyes that hadn't been there 5 years ago. A retired engineer who'd spent 30 years building a comfortable life, now sitting in his bedroom learning his own child had robbed him blind. "I'll call you back," I said. I didn't go to dinner. The next morning, I sat at my kitchen table with Sam and his associate, a sharp young woman named Patricia who specialized in financial fraud. Between us lay printouts of bank statements, transfer records, and forged signatures. She started small, Patricia said, pointing to entries from 3 years ago. 500 here, 1,000 there, testing the waters, then the amounts increased. Last month alone, she moved $35,000 to an LLC registered in Tom's name. What's the LLC for? Real estate investment in Cabo San Lucas. They're trying to flip condos down there. From what I can see, the market collapsed and they're hemorrhaging money. Sam leaned forward. David, we need to move carefully here. Jessica has legal power of attorney. She can argue she was managing your money, making investments on your behalf. With my money in an account I can't access? That's the argument we'll make, but we need more evidence. We need her to expose herself. I stared at the papers. My daughter's signature next to mine, slightly different in the forgeries, but close enough that a bank teller wouldn't question it. What do you need me to do? Act normal, Sam said. Pretend you don't know anything. Let her think she's still in control. Meanwhile, Patricia will dig deeper, and I'll start building a case. When we move decisively. How long? A few weeks, maybe a month. I nodded slowly. I can do that. But inside, something cold and hard was forming, something that felt like a stone settling in my chest. Jessica called that afternoon, her voice bright and cheerful, but there was an undertone of concern that I couldn't ignore. Dad, you missed dinner last night. Are you okay? I sat down on the couch, trying to sound nonchalant as I fiddled with the remote in my hands, but it was an effort. Just tired, I said, keeping my tone casual even though I knew it probably came off as dismissive. You know how it is. Well, Tom and I were hoping to talk to you about something. Can we come by tomorrow? Sure. What's it about? I asked, my mind already racing, wondering if they needed financial help or if something had happened to the kids. It was a rare day when Jessica asked to come over for something, nothing urgent. Oh, just some financial planning stuff, nothing urgent. She paused. I could hear her hesitate just for a moment, like she was choosing her words carefully. Okay, sounds fine, I said, trying to keep things light. I was all too familiar with those undertones. Whenever she used those words, it usually meant something more serious was on her mind. It had been that way since Eleanor's passing. After she hung up, I stood there for a moment, staring at the spot where I had sat on the couch with Eleanor, back before it all fell apart. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a garage full of tools I rarely used anymore. The house still carried the faint scent of pine, lingering from the Christmas tree we'd put up just a few months ago. The one we hadn't bothered with this year. It felt like a relic of the past, a collection of memories I didn't know how to leave behind. Eleanor and I had bought this place 30 years ago when Jessica was just a baby. Back then, it had been a home full of dreams and possibilities. We'd painted her room pink, her favorite color at the time, and built a swing set in the backyard. We'd hosted birthday parties and graduations, the sound of children's laughter filling every corner. Those were the days when it felt like the future was something you could shape with your own hands. Now, it felt like a museum of a life that had ended the day Eleanor's heart gave out. The walls, once filled with love and warmth, now felt hollow. I'd never understood how people could live in houses like these after something like that, but here I was, doing it, day after day. The silence was deafening at times. The house seemed to echo with the absence of her voice. I could almost hear her in the kitchen, moving about, fixing one of her famous meals. Her laughter used to ring through the halls, her presence a constant, soothing hum in the background of our daily lives. I walked through the house now, the rooms feeling like foreign spaces. I stopped at the hallway where Jessica's old bedroom door stood ajar. The walls were still the same pale shade of pink we'd chosen so long ago. I used to peek in on her at night, watching her sleep, her small chest rising and falling with each breath. Now, I couldn't bear to go in there. It felt like stepping into a time I could never return to. I turned away and headed to my office, a small room at the back of the house. I'd always liked it. It was a quiet space where I could think, a sanctuary from the noise of the world. I closed the door behind me, and for a moment, I just stood there, taking in the clutter. It hadn't changed much over the years. The bookshelves, still crammed with old law books, the worn leather chair that Eleanor had insisted was too uncomfortable for me, but I'd kept it anyway. The cluttered desk, papers scattered across it like a reflection of my state of mind, unorganized, but somehow familiar. Insurance papers, the deed to the house, investment statements from before Jessica took over the financial matters. I'd been meticulous my whole career, documenting everything, keeping records of every detail, no matter how small. It had been my way of coping, I suppose, creating order when everything around me had fallen apart. The papers felt cold in my hands, like nothing more than a collection of meaningless documents. But then again, maybe they weren't. Maybe they were the key to holding on to something I could still control, something that could save me now. I laid them out on the desk, the folders lined up in neat rows. Each one represented a chapter of my life, my career, my family, my marriage to Eleanor. It had all been so carefully planned, so precise, as if the future could be mapped out with the right documents and a few well-placed signatures. I picked up the last file in the stack, the one labeled Eleanor's Estate. It had been nearly a year since she passed, and I still hadn't brought myself to go through it all. There were too many memories, too much emotion tied up in each paper. I had pushed it aside, hoping time would make it easier. But I knew better. Time only deepens the ache. I flipped through the papers, scanning the familiar phrases, the numbers that meant little now without her beside me to share them with. The house, the investments, the life insurance policy, everything was tied up in legalities and logistics now. She had left me well prepared, but it wasn't the security of wealth I missed. It was the security of having her around. I glanced at the clock on the wall. It was nearly dusk. The house was growing dim, the shadows creeping in like old memories. I'd always hated this time of day. It was when everything seemed to slow down, when the weight of the day's events settled into your bones. I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes, letting the quiet wash over me. But the silence felt different tonight. There was a tension in the air, a crackling energy, as if something was about to happen. It wasn't the first time I'd felt it. There had been others. Small, quiet moments where I sensed something was changing, something I couldn't quite grasp. Tomorrow. Jessica and Tom were coming by. They'd said it was nothing urgent, but I knew better. Jessica had always been careful with her words, and when she said nothing urgent, it usually meant something big was on the horizon. I wasn't sure if I was ready to face whatever it was, but then again, when had I ever been truly ready for anything? I stood up and stretched, feeling the weight of the years in my back. The house creaked around me, as though it, too, were settling into the new reality. The phone rang again, startling me out of my thoughts. I glanced at the screen. It was Jessica. I picked up the phone, trying to mask the weariness in my voice. "Hello? Dad," she said, her voice tight. "I just wanted to let you know I might be a little late tomorrow. There's something I need to take care of first. But I'll be there, I promise." "Of course," I replied. "Take your time." She hesitated before saying, "Love you, Dad." "Love you too," I said. But the words felt hollow in my mouth. There was something she wasn't telling me, I could feel it. I hung up and set the phone down. The night stretched ahead of me, long and uncertain. Tomorrow, it seemed, was going to bring more than just a conversation about financial planning. I just had to hope I was ready for whatever it was. They arrived at 11 the next morning. Tom wore a polo shirt and khakis, his corporate smile firmly in place. Jessica kissed my cheek and set a bakery bag on the counter. "Brought your favorite," she said. "Blueberry muffins." We sat at the kitchen table, coffee between us, and Tom cleared his throat. "David, we wanted to talk to you about your financial situation." "What about it?" "Well, we've been managing your accounts for 3 years now, and we think it's time to consider some changes. You're getting older and—" "I'm 58, Tom, not 90. Of course. But with your retirement and everything, we're thinking it might be wise to consolidate your assets, make things simpler." Jessica put her hand on mine. "Dad, we're worried about you. Living alone in this big house, managing all these accounts. We think you should consider signing over full control to us. Not just power of attorney, but actual ownership transfer. For your protection." The stone in my chest grew heavier. "Protection from what?" "From yourself," Tom said smoothly. "Look, we've all seen older people get confused, make bad decisions. We want to make sure you're taken care of." I looked at my daughter. Her eyes were earnest, concerned, the same eyes that used to look up at me when she scraped her knee or needed help with homework. "Let me think about it." "Of course," Jessica said. "Take all the time you need." After they left, I called Sam. "They want me to sign everything over to them." "Don't! We're close to having what we need. Just a few more days." Patricia's call came 3 days later, and I could tell from the moment I saw her name on the screen that something was wrong. It wasn't the usual friendly chatter or updates on business. It was the kind of call that hit you in the gut. "Hey, it's me," she said, her voice strained. "I found something." I sat up straighter, my heart already picking up speed. "What is it?" "Tom and Jessica took out a second mortgage on their house 6 months ago," she said, her voice low and careful, like she was testing the waters before she dropped the bomb. "They're in debt up to their eyeballs, credit cards maxed out, business loans overdue. The Cabo property is underwater. They're desperate." I felt a knot twist in my stomach. My first thought was of Jessica, the daughter I had raised, the one who had once idolized me, whose face still carried the innocence of childhood memories even as she entered adulthood. "How desperate?" I asked, my voice hollow. "Desperate enough to file for conservatorship over you if you don't cooperate," Patricia answered. The words landed like a sucker punch, knocking the breath out of me. "I found draft paperwork on Tom's laptop. They're planning to declare you mentally incompetent." A wave of dizziness washed over me. I gripped the phone tighter, my knuckles white, as though holding on to something solid could keep me from losing my balance entirely. For a moment, I couldn't process what she was saying. Can they do that? The question left my mouth before I had a chance to think about it. My voice felt foreign to me, too small, too weak for something so monumental. They can try, Patricia said, her voice sharp now, laced with both frustration and sympathy. They'll need medical evidence, but doctors can be persuaded, especially if your daughter is convincing enough about your supposed decline. The world seemed to narrow around me, each word ringing louder in my ears, drowning out everything else. The room around me felt distant, like I was watching from a window rather than standing inside it. The only thing that mattered in that moment was the horrible realization of betrayal. The image of Jessica, sitting across from me at the kitchen table, laughing with me about some trivial thing, was all I could see. How had it come to this? What had happened to the little girl who used to curl up on my lap with a book, her head resting on my chest? That version of her felt like a dream now, like something that happened in a past life, far removed from the woman who had grown into someone I barely recognized. I felt a surge of anger then, a different kind of anger than what I had been living with for the past few years. It wasn't cold and calculating, the kind I had learned to hide behind for self-preservation. No, this was real, raw fury. The fury was followed quickly by a dark, gnawing feeling in my gut, a sharp twist of humiliation. How had I not seen this coming? Hadn't there been signs? Jessica and Tom had always been so eager to talk about financial matters, always mentioning investments and returns, always making sure I was covered. I had chalked it up to their concern for my well-being. Now I realized it had been more than concern. It had been manipulation, a slow build-up to the moment they could seize control of everything I had built. "What's our next move?" I asked, the words slipping from my mouth without hesitation. I wasn't ready to give up everything. Not this way. Not without a fight. "Sam wants to meet with you tonight," Patricia said. "He has a plan." The mention of Sam made me pause. Sam was Patricia's husband, a man who had become something of a mentor to me in the past few years. He was sharp, unyielding, and always a few steps ahead. If anyone could come up with a strategy to take on Jessica and Tom, it was Sam. But I knew this wouldn't be easy. This wasn't some business dispute where you could sit down at a table and hash things out over a glass of bourbon. This was family, family with its own set of rules, its own emotional baggage. Patricia continued. "He's been tracking the financial situation. He's got connections that could help us build a defense. We need to move quickly." "Tonight, then," I said, more to myself than to her. I was suddenly very aware of how empty the house felt, how the silence seemed louder now. Even the ticking of the clock on the wall seemed to echo, marking the passage of time, each tick a reminder that I was running out of it. I thanked Patricia and hung up the phone, my mind racing. As I stood there staring out the window, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had been blindsided by the people I trusted most. Jessica, my own daughter, how had I missed it? Had I been so absorbed in my own grief that I hadn't seen the cracks forming around me? I had tried to shield her from the harshness of the world after Eleanor died. I had tried to keep things normal for her, even when everything in me screamed to shut down, to retreat into the quiet of my own thoughts. I had wanted her to grow up strong, to be independent, to live a life full of promise. But now, it seemed, she had learned well enough from me. Perhaps too well. The ruthlessness, the drive for security, the need to control. It had all been passed down to her. And she had learned to use it, not for good, but for her own gain. My hands clenched into fists at my sides. I couldn't let her do this. I couldn't let Tom use her like this. The thought of losing everything, my assets, my home, my dignity, was too much to bear. I had worked my entire life for this. I had built it all, brick by brick, and now, in the span of a few months, they were willing to take it all away from me. I shook my head, willing myself to focus. I needed to think clearly. I couldn't let anger blind me. I had to be strategic. I had to be smart. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about control, about power, about the very essence of my life. I headed toward the front door, the weight of the situation pressing down on my shoulders. I wasn't going to wait around, hoping things would fix themselves. I had worked too hard, and I wasn't going to let them take it from me without a fight. I needed to get to Sam. He would know what to do. He would have a plan, one that might give me a fighting chance. As I walked through the house, each step felt heavier than the last. The walls seemed to close in around me, and the faint echoes of my past life whispered through the rooms. The house wasn't just a structure, it was a piece of my identity. The life Eleanor and I had built together, the memories, the legacy. But I wasn't going to lose it all. Not without a fight. We met at Sam's office after hours. He spread documents across his conference table like a general planning a campaign. "Here's what we're going to do," he said. "David, you're going to tell Jessica you've decided to sign everything over to her. Set up a meeting at your house. Tell her you want to make it official. We'll have the paperwork ready, except it won't be what she thinks it is." "What will it be?" "A trap. We're going to record everything. I want her to admit what she's been doing, explain why, talk about the money. Then we'll have her. She won't just confess. She will if you push the right buttons. Tell her you know about the Cabo property. Tell her you know about their debts. Make her defensive. When people are defensive, they justify. When they justify, they admit." Patricia added, "I'll be in the next room with recording equipment. Everything she says will be documented." "And then what?" Sam's expression hardened. "Then we destroy her. Legally, financially, socially. We file criminal charges for fraud and theft. We sue for recovery of all funds plus damages. We make sure everyone in your family knows exactly what she did. By the time we're done, she'll have nothing." I looked at the papers, then at Sam's face. He'd been my friend for 20 years, since we met at a charity golf tournament. He'd handled my will, my contracts, my divorce from my first wife before Eleanor. He knew me better than almost anyone. "Will it work?" "If you can keep your cool, yes. Can you?" I thought about 3 years of lies, 3 years of, "How are you doing, Dad?" and "Let me help you, Dad," while she bled me dry. 3 years of planning to strip me of my autonomy and my assets. "I can keep my cool," I said. I called Jessica the next morning, the phone feeling heavier in my hand than it had in years. The weight of the decision I was about to make settled around me like a thick fog. I had spent most of the night awake, tossing and turning, haunted by the conversation we had a few days ago and the realization of what had become of my relationship with her. She was my daughter. I had given everything for her, sacrificed more than I could ever truly articulate, and yet here I was, about to sign over control of everything I had built to her and Tom. I wasn't sure if it was the right choice, or just the only choice left. "Dad?" Jessica's voice crackled over the line, bright and eager. "Is everything okay?" I exhaled slowly. The sound of her voice was so familiar, but it felt distant now, like hearing a song from an old life. "I've been thinking about what you said," I said, keeping my tone steady, trying to mask the conflict inside. "About signing things over to you. I think you're right." There was a pause on the other end. I could practically feel her excitement building before she spoke. "Really? Dad, that's wonderful. This is the right decision." "It should have been easy, shouldn't it? After all, Jessica was my daughter. I wanted what was best for her. If giving her control of everything I had left would ensure her stability, then it was a small price to pay, right? But a gnawing doubt settled in my chest. What was really best for her? The words hung in the air for a moment, and I pushed them aside. I couldn't afford the luxury of doubt now. I had to be certain, even if only on the surface. "I'll need you and Tom to come over on Saturday," I said, my voice firm despite the unease twisting inside me. "I want to get this done." "Of course!" Jessica's voice brightened immediately. "We'll be there at 2. It'll be great, Dad. We'll get everything sorted. You won't have to worry about anything." I hung up the phone, the finality of the conversation settling like a weight on my shoulders. This was it then, the beginning of the end. Or maybe it was the end of the beginning. Either way, I had made my decision. I had always prided myself on being able to make decisions quickly, without hesitation. But now, with the entire weight of my life and my legacy in the balance, I felt anything but certain. I stood there for a moment, the phone still warm in my hand. I wasn't ready for what came next, but there wasn't much left I could do. The path had been chosen. With a deep sigh, I set the phone down and walked through the house again. The house. It used to feel like a sanctuary, a home full of memories and life. Now it felt like an empty shell, each room echoing with the ghosts of the past. I walked down the hallway to Jessica's old bedroom, the door ajar. I hadn't been in here in years. The door creaked open as I pushed it, the familiar smell of old wood and dust hitting me immediately. I stopped in the doorway and took it all in. The room was mostly untouched, frozen in time, a shrine to the person she used to be. The walls were still painted that soft pink we had chosen together when she was little. There were posters from her high school years still taped to the walls, faded slightly at the edges, the colors softening with time. I saw the frame of her childhood swing set in one corner, a relic of a time when she still needed me to build things for her, to care for her in every way. But it wasn't the room itself that drew me in. It was the box. It was sitting on the far side of the room, tucked into the corner of her closet, half hidden behind a stack of old books. I knew instantly what it was. A box of her childhood things. Things I had put away all those years ago. Things that had once meant the world to me. Things that had once meant the world to us. I walked over and lifted the box carefully. It felt lighter than I expected, as though the weight of her memories had slowly faded with time. I sat down on the floor, pulling the box into my lap. Inside were mementos of her life, papers, cards, photos, pieces of the girl I had raised, the girl who had once looked at me like I was the center of her world. I picked up a report card from the 3rd grade, straight A's, the signature on the bottom. "Great job, Jessica. Keep it up. Love, Mrs. Peterson." Her handwriting had been neat and small, even back then. I remembered how she'd brought me the report card with such pride, her blue eyes shining with excitement as she jumped up and down. "I did it, Dad. I got straight A's, just like you said I could." I ran my finger over the paper, as though trying to pull her back to me, just for a moment. Where had that little girl gone? I pushed the report card aside and reached deeper into the box. I pulled out a Mother's Day card she had made in 3rd grade. The drawing on the front was simple. Stick figures, her and Eleanor holding hands under a big sun, smiling at each other. Inside, in her child's scrawl, it read, "Happy Mother's Day, Mom. I love you lots. From Jessica." My throat tightened. Eleanor had kept that card, even after the years had passed. It had been one of the things we put in a frame on the mantel, right next to a picture of the 3 of us. It was funny how small, simple things could carry so much weight. I ran my thumb over the edge of the card, my heart aching. How had it all unraveled so quickly? Had we been happy? Or had we just been going through the motions, pretending that things would always be the same, that life would always be perfect? The next item I pulled out was a photo of the 2 of us at her high school graduation. It was one of my favorites, a candid shot of Jessica and me, both grinning wide at the camera. She was in her cap and gown, looking radiant, her long brown hair blowing slightly in the breeze. She had her arm wrapped around me, pulling me in for the shot. I could see the pride on her face, the way she looked at me like I was the reason she had made it there. I swallowed hard, my breath hitching. That was when I thought everything was perfect. I thought she was going to conquer the world. I thought I had given her all the tools she would ever need to succeed and be happy. But somewhere along the way, things had gone off track. And now, she was asking for everything I had left. My money, my home, my future. I closed the box and gently placed it back in the closet, the weight of it suddenly too much to bear. I stood there for a moment, staring at the closed door, The girl in the photo, the one who had looked at me like I could do no wrong, was gone. And in her place was someone else, a stranger who had taken the years of love and devotion I had given her and used them to get what she wanted. The reality of the situation hit me harder than I had expected. I had always believed in her. I had always thought that no matter what happened, we would be a family, that we would figure it out together. But now, it seemed, I was just a means to an end. I took a deep breath and walked out of the room, closing the door softly behind me. The weight of the decision I had made, the decision to give her everything, pressed down on me like a 100-pound stone. But there was no turning back now. She was coming over Saturday, and once I signed those papers, everything would change. Saturday arrived cold and gray. Patricia set up equipment in my bedroom, running wireless microphones through my shirt. Sam reviewed the documents one last time. "Remember," he said, "get her talking. The more she explains, the more evidence we have." At 2:00 exactly, Jessica and Tom arrived. They were dressed casually but expensively, designer jeans, leather jackets, clothes my money had probably paid for. We sat in the living room, and I pulled out a folder. I had some papers drawn up. Before we sign anything, though, I need to understand something. "What's that?" Jessica asked. "The Cabo property. How much of my money went into that?" The room went quiet. Tom glanced at Jessica. She recovered quickly, her smile barely faltering. "Dad, that was an investment opportunity. We were trying to grow your assets. By buying condos in Mexico? How is that growing my assets when I can't access the money? The market just needs time." "The market collapsed," I said flatly. "You lost everything, and now you're in debt, and you want me to sign over what's left so you can use it to bail yourselves out." Jessica's expression shifted, warmth fading to something harder. "Dad, you don't understand how investments work. I'm an engineer. I understand numbers just fine. I understand that $240,000 is missing from my accounts." Tom stood up. "Look, David, we've been managing your money because you asked us to. If you're unhappy with our performance..." "Performance? Is that what we're calling theft now?" "We didn't steal anything," Jessica said, her voice rising. "We had power of attorney. We were making financial decisions on your behalf. If those decisions didn't work out, that's not theft. That's just bad luck." "Bad luck," I repeated. "Is that what you'll tell the police?" Her face went pale. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about fraud, forgery, embezzlement. I'm talking about you taking money from accounts you weren't authorized to touch and funneling it into your personal ventures." Tom's corporate mask cracked. "You can't prove any of that." "I can, actually. I have 3 years of bank statements, transfer records, and documentation of every transaction you made without my knowledge or consent. And I have this conversation on tape." Jessica looked around wildly as if she could spot the hidden microphones. "You're recording us?" "Every word." She turned to Tom, panic in her eyes, then back to me. "Dad, please, we can work this out. We'll pay you back." "With what? You have no money. Your business is failing. Your house is mortgaged to the hilt. You have nothing." "Then what do you want?" She was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. "What do you want from us?" I stood up, looking down at my daughter, the little girl who used to hold my hand, the teenager who'd rolled her eyes at my jokes, the woman who'd hugged me at her mother's funeral and whispered that we'd get through it together. "I want you to face consequences," I said quietly. "I want you to understand that actions have repercussions, and I want my money back." Sam emerged from the bedroom, Patricia behind him. "Jessica Miller, Tom Miller, I'm serving you both with notice of criminal charges and a civil lawsuit. You'll be hearing from the district attorney's office within the week." Jessica stared at the papers Sam handed her, then at me. "Dad, you can't do this. I'm your daughter." "That's the worst part," I said. "You are my daughter, and you did this anyway." They left, Tom practically dragging Jessica to the car. I watched through the window as they drove away, then sat down heavily on the couch. "We got everything," Patricia said, headphones around her neck. "Full confession, admission of debt, everything." Sam put a hand on my shoulder. "You did good, David." I didn't feel good. I felt hollow. The legal process ground forward with mechanical efficiency. The district attorney, a woman named Helen Marks, reviewed Patricia's evidence and agreed to prosecute. Jessica and Tom were charged with multiple counts of fraud, theft, and forgery. Their lawyer, a nervous young man in an oversized suit, tried to negotiate a plea deal. Sam shut it down. "Your client stole $250,000 from a widower," he told the lawyer. "There's no deal here. They go to trial or they plead guilty to every charge. Those are the options." The lawyer went pale. "They don't have the money to pay restitution. Then they'll figure something out. Sell their house, liquidate their assets, get jobs. I don't care how they do it, but they're paying back every penny with interest." In the end, they pleaded guilty. The sentencing hearing was scheduled for late November. I didn't see or speak to Jessica in the weeks leading up to sentencing. She called several times, leaving voicemails that ranged from apologetic to angry to desperate. I deleted them all without listening past the first few seconds. Tom called once, trying to negotiate directly. "David, please, Jessica's falling apart. Can't we work something out?" "Tell it to the judge," I said, and hung up. The day before the hearing, I went to Eleanor's grave for the first time in months. The headstone was simple granite, her name and dates carved in plain letters. I sat on the grass beside it. "I found out what Jessica did," I said to the stone. "She was stealing from us, from me. After you died while I was grieving, she was taking everything we built." The November wind rustled through the cemetery trees. "I'm making her pay for it. They're going to prison, probably, and I'm getting the money back, most of it anyway." I paused. "I keep wondering if this is what you would have wanted, if you'd want me to go this far." The stone said nothing, of course, but I knew what Eleanor would have said. She'd been tougher than me in a lot of ways, less willing to tolerate nonsense. She'd have been furious at Jessica. She'd have supported every action I'd taken. "I miss you," I told the stone. "I miss having someone to talk to about this. Someone who understood." I sat there until the sun started setting, then drove home. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Jessica and Tom sat at the defense table with their lawyer, both dressed conservatively, trying to look respectable. Jessica's eyes were red and puffy. Tom stared straight ahead, jaw tight. Helen Marks presented the case methodically. The theft, the forged signatures, the deliberate deception. She played excerpts from the recording, Jessica's voice tinny through the courtroom speakers. "We had power of attorney. We were making financial decisions on your behalf." The judge, an older woman with silver hair and steel-frame glasses, listened without expression. When it was time for victim impact statements, Sam nodded at me. I stood, walking to the microphone on shaky legs. "Your Honor," I began, then stopped. I'd prepared a speech, written it out, and memorized it. But standing there looking at my daughter's bowed head, the words felt wrong. "My wife died 3 years ago," I said instead. "It was sudden. Heart attack. One day she was there, the next day she wasn't. I was lost. My daughter, Jessica, she stepped up. She helped me with paperwork, with bills, with all the practical things I couldn't focus on. I thought she was helping me. I thought she cared." Jessica was crying openly now. Instead, she was stealing. While I was grieving, while I was trying to figure out how to live without my wife, my daughter was draining my bank accounts. Taking money Eleanor and I had saved for decades. Money we planned to use for retirement, for emergencies, maybe for our grandchildren's education someday. I gripped the podium. "I'm not here asking for sympathy. I'm here asking for justice. What they did wasn't a mistake or bad judgment. It was deliberate, sustained theft from a family member who trusted them, and I want them held accountable. I sat down. Sam squeezed my shoulder. The judge reviewed her notes, then looked at Jessica and Tom. "Stand, please." They stood, Tom's hand on Jessica's elbow. "I've reviewed the evidence in this case extensively," the judge said. "The theft was calculated and continuous over 3 years. The total amount stolen exceeds $200,000. This wasn't a moment of poor judgment. This was a pattern of criminal behavior targeting a vulnerable family member." She looked directly at Jessica. "You were in a position of trust. Your father gave you power of attorney in his grief, believing you would help him. Instead, you exploited that trust for personal gain. The betrayal here is profound. On the charge of theft by deception, I sentence you to 3 years in state prison, suspended after 18 months upon completion of restitution and probation terms. On the charge of forgery, I sentence you to 2 years, to run concurrently. You will also pay full restitution of $243,000, plus interest and court costs." She turned to Tom. "You were complicit in this fraud, knowingly benefiting from stolen money. I sentence you to 2 years in state prison, suspended after 12 months upon completion of restitution and probation terms." She banged her gavel. "We're adjourned." Jessica collapsed into her chair, sobbing. Tom's face was ashen. Their lawyer patted Jessica's shoulder awkwardly, whispering something I couldn't hear. I walked out of the courtroom without looking back. The media picked up the story. "Daughter sentenced for stealing $250,000 from father," read one headline. Jessica's mugshot appeared in the local paper, her face tear-stained and miserable. I got calls from reporters asking for interviews. I declined all of them. Jessica reported to the county jail 3 weeks later to begin her sentence. Tom reported a week after that. Patricia worked on recovering the assets, tracking down money in various accounts, filing liens against their property. "We'll get most of it back," she told me. "Their house will sell, probably at a loss in this market, but it'll cover a chunk. The rest will come from wage garnishment once they're released." "How long will that take?" "Years, probably, but you'll get it." I nodded, but the money didn't seem to matter much anymore. What mattered was the empty house, the quiet evenings, the absence of family. Spring came slowly. I started going to the cemetery more often, talking to Eleanor Stone about ordinary things, the weather, a book I'd read, how the garden was coming in. "Jessica's been in jail 4 months now," I told the Stone in April. "She writes me letters. I don't open them." I pulled a weed growing near the headstone. "Tom's mother called me last week, asked if I'd visit them, talk to them. I said no." The truth was more complicated than no. The truth was, I didn't know how to face my daughter now. Didn't know what I'd say or feel. Anger had burned hot for months, sustaining me through the investigation and trial. But anger eventually burns itself out, and what's left is just ash and emptiness. Was I right? I asked the Stone. Was this justice or just revenge? A bird landed on the headstone, tiny and brown. It cocked its head at me, then flew away. Patricia called in late May. "David, we got the proceeds from their house sale. After paying their mortgage and liens, there's $68,000 to put toward restitution. That's less than a third of what they took." "I know, but it's a start. Their wages will be garnished once they're released, 25% of gross income. Assuming they both find jobs quickly, you'll get about another $1,000 a month. So, it'll take, 10 years? Something like that. Maybe less if they get better jobs or come into money somehow." I thanked her and hung up. 10 years. I'd be almost 70 by the time I got my money back. And what would I do with it then? Take the retirement trips Eleanor and I had planned? Buy things I didn't need? Leave it to a grandchild I'd never meet? Jessica was released in August, having served her minimum sentence. Tom got out in September. I heard through Sam that they'd moved into a small apartment across town, both working retail jobs. Their marriage, Sam said, was barely holding together. The letters from Jessica continued. I still didn't open them, but I stopped throwing them away. They accumulated in a drawer in my office, sealed envelopes covered in her familiar handwriting. One evening in October, I found myself pulling them out. 23 letters over 10 months. I lined them up on my desk, looking at the dates on the postmarks. One every 2 weeks or so, like clockwork. I picked up the earliest one and opened it. Dear Dad, it began. I don't know if you'll read this. You probably won't. But I need to say these things anyway, even if just to get them out of my head. I read the whole letter. Then the next one. Then another. By midnight, I'd read them all. They weren't excuses. She didn't try to justify what she'd done or minimize it. Instead, she wrote about shame and guilt and the realization, too late, of what she'd destroyed. She wrote about Tom and their failing marriage, about the choices they'd made and the desperation that had driven them. She wrote about prison, the other women there, the slow, grinding monotony of it, and she wrote about regret. I keep thinking about when I was little, one letter said, and you taught me to ride a bike. You ran alongside me, holding the seat, and I kept yelling, "Don't let go." But you did let go, and I was riding on my own, and I was so proud. I thought you were a superhero. I thought you could do anything. What happened to that girl? The letter continued. When did I become someone who could hurt you? I wish I could go back and be her again, the girl who thought her dad was a superhero. But I can't. I can only be who I am now, someone who destroyed everything good in her life because of greed and stupidity. I put the letters away and sat in the dark office for a long time. November came around again, a year since the sentencing. Patricia had recovered another $30,000 through various means, bringing the total to $98,000, still well short of what was stolen, but progress. I got a call from an unfamiliar number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Dad? Jessica's voice, tentative and small. Please don't hang up. I didn't say anything. I know you probably don't want to talk to me, she continued quickly. I know I don't deserve it, but I wanted to tell you something. Tom and I are divorced. It's final. And I wanted you to know that everything that happened, all the stealing and lying, it's on me. He went along with it, yeah, but I'm the one who started it. I'm the one who kept pushing for more. It was my fault. Why are you telling me this? Because it's true, and because I'm trying to be honest now, even though it's too late to matter. I closed my eyes. What do you want, Jessica? Nothing. I don't want anything. I just wanted you to know that I understand what I did. I understand that I can't fix it, and I understand if you never want to see me again. I read your letters, I said. Silence on the other end. Then, quietly. You did? All of them. Oh. She was crying. I could hear it in her voice. I didn't think you would. I don't know what to do with them, I admitted. I don't know what to do with any of this. You don't have to do anything. I just needed to apologize. For real, not in a letter. Even if you can't forgive me. I don't know if I can, I said. I know. That's okay. We sat there in silence, the phone line connecting us across town, but really across an unbridgeable gulf. Finally, she spoke again. Is there anything you want to ask me? Anything you want to know? Why? The question burst out before I could stop it. Why did you do it? I don't know. I keep asking myself that. Tom's business was failing, and we were drowning in debt, and it started as just borrowing a little, just to get through a rough patch. But then it was so easy, and nobody noticed, and I kept telling myself I'd pay it back. And then it snowballed, and I couldn't stop, and everything just got worse and worse. You could have asked me for help. I know, but I was ashamed. And once I'd already stolen from you, how could I ask for more? I'd trapped myself. She took a shaky breath. I'm not making excuses. There is no excuse. I'm just trying to explain how it happened, even though explaining doesn't make it better. No, I agreed. It doesn't. I should let you go, she said. Thank you for answering. Thank you for reading my letters. She hung up before I could respond. Winter came, then spring again. The restitution payments continued trickling in, slow and steady. Jessica got a better job doing bookkeeping for a small accounting firm. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Sam said her garnished wages increased, bringing the monthly payment up to $1,500. At this rate, you'll be fully repaid in 7 years, Patricia calculated. 7 years. I'd be 65, Social Security age, the age Eleanor and I had planned to start traveling. I sold the house in June. It was too big, too full of memories, too much empty space echoing back at me. I moved into a condo downtown, 2 bedrooms, a balcony overlooking the river. I gave most of the furniture to charity and started over with new things. In the process of packing, I found more photos. Jessica as a baby, toddler, child, teenager. Every stage of her life documented in neat albums Eleanor had kept. I almost threw them away. Instead, I packed them carefully and took them with me. My birthday rolled around in August, 60 years old. Jessica sent a card. She had my new address somehow, probably through Sam. Inside, she'd written, "Happy birthday, Dad. I hope you're well. I'm sorry for everything. Always will be. Love, Jessica." I put the card on my refrigerator. It looked strange there, the only personal item in my new kitchen. The next day, I called Sam. "I want to meet with her." "Are you sure?" "No, but I want to anyway." He set it up for the following week, a coffee shop downtown, neutral territory. I arrived early and sat by the window, watching people pass on the street outside. Jessica came in at exactly 3 o'clock. She looked older, thinner. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she wore jeans and a plain blue sweater. No makeup, no jewelry. She saw me and hesitated, then walked over. "Hi," she said. "Hi." We sat there awkwardly. She ordered coffee, I ordered more coffee, and we both stared at our cups. "Thank you for agreeing to meet me," she finally said. "I don't know why I did." "That's fair." I looked at her, really looked at her. She had Eleanor's eyes. I'd never noticed before, or maybe I'd been avoiding noticing. But she did. The same green-gray, the same slight upturn at the corners. "I miss your mother," I said abruptly. Jessica nodded. "I miss her too, every day. She would have been disappointed in you." "I know." Her voice cracked slightly. "That's the worst part, knowing that. Why did you call me? Why push for this meeting?" She wrapped her hands around her coffee cup. "Because I'm trying to figure out how to live with what I did. I'm trying to be better than I was. And part of that is facing you, even though it's terrifying and I don't deserve forgiveness." "You don't," I agreed. "I know." We drank our coffee in silence. Then I said, "I'm getting about $1,500 a month from your garnished wages." "I know. They tell me every time. At this rate, full restitution will take 7 years." "I know that too." I leaned forward. "Here's what I want to know. In 7 years, when the debt is paid, what then? Do you disappear from my life completely? Do we pretend none of this happened? What's the end game here?" Jessica looked at me with those eyes that were so much like Eleanor's. "I don't know. I guess that's up to you. I can't demand anything. I don't have that right anymore." "No, you don't. But if you ask me what I want, I'd say I want to know you again someday. Not now. Maybe not for years, but someday. I want to prove to you that I'm not that person anymore. The person who stole from you. People don't change that much. Maybe not. But I'm trying." I finished my coffee and stood up. "I'll think about it. That's all I can ask." I left her sitting there and walked out into the summer afternoon. The sun was bright, the river sparkling. I felt something shifting inside me, like a door opening just a crack. Not forgiveness, not yet, maybe not ever, but possibility. Fall came again. 2 years since I'd discovered the theft. Jessica and I didn't meet again, but we started texting occasionally. Brief messages. How are you doing? Fine, you? Getting by. Nothing deep or meaningful, just small threads connecting us. Patricia called in December with an update. We've recovered $130,000 so far, just past the halfway point. That's good. It is. Jessica's been consistent with payments, no issues there. I thanked her and hung up. $130,000, more than half my money back, and somehow it mattered less than I'd thought it would. The years passed, not quickly, but steadily. I retired fully, stopped consulting work, focused on other things. I took up woodworking, making furniture in a small shop I rented. I traveled some, though not as much as Eleanor and I had planned. Alone, travel was different. Jessica and I met for coffee every few months. The conversations got easier, though never easy. We talked about surface things mostly. Her job, my hobbies, the weather, carefully avoiding anything deeper. But gradually, carefully, we built something. Not the relationship we'd had before. That was gone, burned away by betrayal and consequence. But something new, something more honest, maybe. Built on the understanding that trust is fragile and precious, and once broken, never quite the same. In the 5th year, Jessica got promoted to senior bookkeeper. Her garnished wages increased. Patricia calculated the remaining debt would be paid off in 18 months instead of 2 years. That's ahead of schedule, I said. She's been making voluntary additional payments, Patricia explained. Small amounts, $50 or $100 here and there. But it adds up. I thought about that. Jessica, living in her small apartment, working her 40 hours a week at the accounting firm, sending extra money beyond what was required, trying in her way to make amends. I called her that evening. I heard you're making extra payments. Yeah, when I can. You don't have to do that. I know, I want to. We were both quiet for a moment. Then I said, I'm proud of you. She started crying. I could hear it through the phone. You are? Yes, for getting your life together, for following through, for being consistent. Thank you, she whispered. That means everything. The final payment came on a Tuesday in March, 7 years almost to the day from when Sam first told me about the theft. Patricia called to confirm. That's it. $243,000 plus interest and fees, debt paid in full. I stood on my balcony, looking at the river. 7 years. Jessica was 39 now, working as a financial controller for a medium-sized company. She'd rebuilt her life piece by piece. I was 65, officially old, though I didn't feel it most days. I texted her. Patricia says the debt is paid. She replied immediately. I know. I made the last payment this morning. Can we meet? When? Now. We met at the same coffee shop where we'd had our first meeting 7 years ago. She looked different now, more confident, more settled. The haunted look was gone from her eyes. It's done, she said. Finally. It is. She took a deep breath. So what now? I pulled an envelope from my jacket pocket. This is for you. She opened it, confused. Inside was a check, made out to her, for $50,000. Dad, what? It's from the restitution money. I'm giving it to you. I don't understand. You paid me back, every penny. You didn't have to make extra payments, but you did. You worked hard, you stayed consistent, you proved yourself. This is me acknowledging that. Tears streamed down her face. I can't take this. It's your money. I stole it from you. And you paid it back, with 7 years of your life, with your marriage, with your pride. You've paid enough. I pushed the envelope toward her. Take it. Start a savings account. Build something for yourself. Show me that my daughter really did learn from her mistakes. She stared at the check, then at me. Why would you do this? Because your mother would have wanted me to. I paused. And because I want to. She came around the table and hugged me. I hugged her back, feeling her shake with sobs against my shoulder. We stayed like that for a long moment, and something in my chest that had been tight for 7 years finally loosened. When we separated, she wiped her eyes. I don't deserve this. Probably not, but that's not the point. What is the point? The point is moving forward. The point is that you've paid your debt, legally and morally. The point is that I'm 65 years old and I don't want to spend whatever time I have left being angry at my only child. She nodded, clutching the envelope. Can I ask you something? Sure. Do you forgive me? I considered the question carefully. I'm working on it. Some days are easier than others, but yes, I think I'm getting there. That's more than I hoped for. We talked for another hour, about everything and nothing, about her job and my woodworking projects, about Eleanor and how we both still missed her, about the future, uncertain but possible now in a way it hadn't been before. When we left the coffee shop, she hugged me again. Thank you, Dad, for everything, for holding me accountable and for giving me another chance. Don't waste it, I said. I won't. Spring turned to summer. Jessica and I started having dinner together once a week, sometimes at restaurants, sometimes at my condo. She told me about her life, a new relationship with someone from her gym, cautious but hopeful. I told her about a cabinet I was building, the way the grain of the wood curved just right. We didn't talk about those 3 years often. When we did, it was brief and honest. I'm sorry, and I know, and we're past it now. Not forgotten. That would never happen, but integrated into our history instead of dominating it. One evening in July, she brought someone to dinner. Michael, her boyfriend, nervous and overly polite. I liked him despite myself. He was a high school teacher, solid and straightforward, the kind of person who wouldn't get caught up in schemes or debts. After they left, I sat on my balcony with a glass of wine, watching the river reflect the city lights. My phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. Thank you for being nice to Michael. It meant a lot to him. To me, too. I replied, he seems good for you. He is. I'm trying to do things right this time. I can tell. I set down my phone and thought about Eleanor. Wondered what she'd think of how things had turned out. The theft and betrayal, yes, but also the restitution and rebuilding. The slow, painful process of finding our way back to some version of family. I think we're going to be okay, I told the night air. Finally. Fall came, and with it Jessica's 40th birthday. She invited me to a small party at her apartment. Just her, Michael, a few friends from work. I brought the cabinet I'd been building, a cherry wood piece with brass handles. Dad, it's beautiful, she said, running her hands over the smooth surface. For your new place, I said. Michael and Jessica were moving in together, a 2-bedroom house with a yard. A step forward. At the party, I watched her laugh with her friends, watched Michael's hand on her shoulder, protective and gentle. She'd built a life from ruins, not the life she'd had before, that was gone forever, but something real and earned. One of her co-workers, a woman named Rita, approached me. You're Jessica's father? I am. She talks about you all the time, about how you believed in her when nobody else did. I didn't correct her. Didn't explain that belief had been hard-won and came only after consequences and accountability. Instead, I said, she's worked hard to get where she is. She has. We're lucky to have her at the firm. She's brilliant with numbers and completely ethical. She'd never let anyone make a mistake with their finances. The irony made me smile. No, I don't suppose she would. Winter arrived, bringing with it my 66th birthday. Jessica and Michael took me to dinner at an expensive steakhouse downtown. We have news, Jessica said over dessert. I looked between them. What kind of news? We're engaged. She held out her hand, showing a simple diamond ring. I looked at Michael. You're sure about this? He smiled. Very sure. She told you everything? About what happened? Everything. First date, actually. She said she wouldn't start a relationship with secrets. He squeezed Jessica's hand. We all make mistakes. What matters is what we do after. I raised my glass. Then congratulations, both of you. Jessica's eyes were bright with tears. Will you walk me down the aisle? The question caught me off guard. Walk her down the aisle. Give her away. All the traditional father-daughter moments I'd thought were lost forever. Yes, I said. I'd be honored. She came around the table and hugged me. I love you, Dad. I love you too. They married in spring, a small ceremony in a garden outside the city. 50 guests, simple flowers, a string quartet. Jessica wore a cream-colored dress, elegant and understated. I walked her down the aisle, her arm looped through mine, and when the officiant asked who gave this woman, I said clearly, I do. At the reception we danced, father and daughter, the traditional dance that I'd wondered if I'd ever experience. The band played something slow and sweet, and we moved across the floor while cameras flashed. Thank you for this, she said quietly, for letting me have this moment. You earned it. I'm going to keep earning it. Every day. I'm going to keep proving that I'm worthy of your trust. I know you will. The song ended. We stepped apart, and I saw Eleanor in Jessica's face again, in her smile, her eyes, the way she tilted her head. My daughter, flawed and human and trying. Michael cut in for the next dance, and I stepped aside, watching them move together. Sam appeared beside me, holding 2 glasses of champagne. Hell of a journey, he said, handing me a glass. It was. Do you regret it? Any of it? I thought about that. The investigation, the trial, the years of distance, the slow, painful rebuilding. No. She needed to face consequences. We both needed that. And now we move forward. Life settled into a new rhythm. Jessica and Michael bought their house. I helped with the down payment, a gift, not a loan. They painted rooms and planted a garden, building their life together. I continued my woodworking, taking commissions now and then. I dated a little. A woman named Carol, who worked at the library, kind and patient. Nothing serious, but companionship. Someone to have dinner with, to go to movies with. Jessica and I talked several times a week. Sometimes about important things, sometimes about nothing. The conversations were easy now, natural. We'd found our footing. One evening, she called, sounding nervous. Dad, can you come over? I need to tell you something. My stomach clenched. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. Just come over. I drove to their house, my mind racing through possibilities. When I arrived, Jessica and Michael were sitting on the couch, holding hands, both grinning. We're pregnant, Jessica said. The world stopped, then started again, different somehow. You're having a baby? Due in November. We just found out. I sat down heavily. A grandchild. Eleanor's grandchild. That's wonderful. Jessica's smile faded slightly. I know this might be complicated. Given everything that happened, if you don't want to be involved... Stop, I interrupted. I want to be involved. Very much. Really? Really. This baby is innocent of everything that came before. And so are you now. You've paid your debt. We've moved past it. This is a fresh start. She started crying, and I pulled her into a hug. Your mother would have been so excited. I wish she could meet the baby. So do I. But we'll tell them about her, about how smart and funny she was, how much she loved you. We'll keep her alive that way. The pregnancy progressed. Jessica had morning sickness, then the glow people talk about. Michael painted the nursery a soft yellow. I built a crib, spending weeks getting every detail right, every joint perfect. In August, Jessica called me one afternoon. Dad, Can you meet me at Mom's grave? Of course. I found her sitting on the grass beside Eleanor's headstone, one hand on her rounded belly. I sat down next to her. I've been thinking about everything, she said. About what I did to you. About how close I came to destroying everything. Jessica. Let me finish. I need to say this here, with Mom. She looked at the headstone. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I became someone you both would have been ashamed of. I'm sorry I hurt Dad so badly. I'm sorry I threw away your trust and your love because I was greedy and stupid. Tears ran down her face. But I want you to know I'm trying to be better. I'm trying to be someone you'd be proud of. Someone who deserves this baby, this marriage, this second chance Dad gave me. She touched the stone gently. I wish you were here to meet your grandchild. I wish you could see that I'm not that person anymore. I put my arm around her shoulders. Your mother loved you. Nothing you did would have changed that. She would have been disappointed, yes. Angry, absolutely. But she would have loved you through it all. Do you think she'd forgive me? I know she would. Because I have. Jessica looked at me, startled. You have? Yes. Completely. It took 7 years, but yes. You've proved yourself. You've changed. You've become someone worthy of trust again, I smiled. Your mother would be proud of who you are now, and so am I.